Hello everyone, my name is Ian and you're watching Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And if you're new here and you like this kind of content, I hope you'll consider subscribing. So today I'm in sunny San Diego, California, where Royal Enfield is launching their Hunter 350 here in the North American market. A huge thanks to Royal Enfield for inviting me out to this press launch. Now, despite this being a press launch, Now, the Royal Enfield 350 is marketed as kind of an urban commuter bike. This is something that's going to be very, very friendly to new or beginning riders. It's very approachable. It has a pretty low seat height, has a very gentle power delivery. It's very, very affordable, and it comes with a standard 3-year warranty. This bike is super easy to ride, it's fun, it's stylish, and at just $3,999 for a brand new motorcycle in the USA, it's one of the best values going right now in the United States for a brand new motorcycle. So today we'll briefly cover the specs and features of the bike, take you on a walk around. We're gonna get the bike out for some good riding, get some on-bike footage for you. We'll come back here, we'll kind of talk about some of the competition, we'll have a few pros and cons, and then we'll close out with my final thoughts. So stay tuned, I think this is gonna be a really fun one. Okay, thanks to the help of the lovely camera woman that's helping me out, one of my fellow riders, I want to show you the seat height and riding position on the Hunter 350. So it's a 31-inch seat height, or about 790 millimeters. Let me take the bike off the center stand. The center stand is included, by the way, with the Hunter, which is really, really nice for maintenance and things like that. So let me show you. I'm 5'11" or 1.78 meters. I have a 32-inch inseam, and you can see it's very easy for me to reach the ground. There's a lot of room here if you're a shorter rider. The riding position you can see is, it looks like this. You can see there's plenty of room. It's comfortable, it's upright. There's a slight forward lean, and you can see for somebody taller than 6 feet, you might want a little bit more leg room, but if you're under 6 foot, I think you're gonna be very, very comfortable. All right, so let's take a walk around of the Hunter 350. Now, I mentioned the price of $3,999, but if you want some of the fancier colors like this one here, you have to pay another $199. So that brings the bike, the MSRP on the three fancy colors to $4,199. So the engine on the Hunter 350 is gonna be familiar. If you're familiar with the Meteor 350 or the Classic 350, it's gonna be the same engine. So it's a 349cc single-cylinder air oil-cooled engine. It redlines at about 7,000 RPM. In terms of power, you're looking at 20 horsepower or 15 kilowatts at 6,100 RPM. Torque is about 20 foot-pounds or 25 newton meters of torque at 4,000 RPM. Notice this motorcycle has the same amount of torque as it does horsepower, meaning that it's going to feel pretty torquey and actually deliver pretty decent acceleration for its modest power figures. It's hooked to a 5-speed gearbox, and of course it uses a chain drive. Let's take a look at the front suspension here. You can see it's a traditional fork, not an upside down fork. 41 millimeter fork legs, 130 millimeters or 5.1 inches of travel. On the rear suspension, you've got twin shock absorbers with 6-step adjustable preload here. You can see there's a preload adjustment ring. And the travel on that is 102 millimeters or about 4 inches. So less travel on the back than on the front. One of the ways they get the lower seat height on a motorcycle like this is by reducing the suspension travel quite a bit. For the front tire, it's a 110/70/17 tubeless tire, and on the back tire you have a 140/70/17 also tubeless. Brakes, the bike does come with ABS. It is not switchable because this is not an off-road bike. You have a 270 millimeter rear disc with a single pot caliper, and in the front you have this dual pot or twin pot caliper with bi-bray components, which is Brembo's Indian division, and you have a 300 millimeter single front disc. Seat height on the Hunter 350 is 790 millimeters or about 31.1 inches, so pretty friendly for new riders. There are bikes out there with lower seat height. It's not the lowest in this kind of class, but it's pretty reasonable. Now we have to talk about the weight. So the curb weight with the bike fully fueled up is 181 kilograms or 399 pounds. So coming in just below that 400-pound mark, which I think is a good thing. Speaking of the fuel capacity, you can see the fuel tank here. It's 13 liters or 3.4 gallons. Now, in terms of riding range, this bike is incredibly fuel efficient. You can achieve fuel mileage over 75 miles per gallon or better than 2.8 liters per 100 kilometers, meaning that you're going to have a riding range, despite a relatively small fuel tank of 13 liters, of well over 300, maybe even 400 kilometers, or 200 to 250 miles. Now, I mentioned the warranty earlier. In the USA, and I think worldwide, these motorcycles are coming with a 3-year unlimited mile warranty, which is pretty astounding for a bike coming in under $4,000. And how many motorcycle manufacturers out there at any price give you a warranty like that? That's pretty amazing that Royal Enfield is doing that. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, what can this bike do on the highway? So we're going to hopefully test that out today in real world conditions. Royal Enfield says it's around 70 miles an hour or 114 kilometers an hour. However, some of the riders who've already been on the bike here in San Diego have said they've been able to achieve 75 to 80 miles an hour, maybe with a slight downhill or something like that. So it's semi-highway capable. I mean, here in USA, we have freeway speeds that are often over 80 miles an hour, and this bike is probably not going to be able to do that. But for short jaunts on the freeway, it's going to be probably okay. For around town or secondary roads, maybe 60, 65 miles an hour or less, it's going to be a good motorcycle for that. Now, I always like to talk about maintenance in my videos, and even though we're at a press launch, I'm still going to cover that here because that's the kind of coverage I'm trying to bring to you, my audience. So oil changes on this bike, so you're going to have to do the initial oil change at 300 miles or 500 kilometers, and then they want you to do an oil change every 10,000 kilometers or 6,200 miles. Now, one of the sticking points with Royal Enfield is they use an older engine technology, so the valve adjustments are a lot more often than a lot of motorcycles out there today. So you're going to have to check those valves every 10,000 kilometers or 6,200 miles, but you're also going to have to do that run-in valve check at 500 kilometers or 300 miles. So the valves are easy to do on a motorcycle like this, and a motorcycle like this, I've often said, it increases your maybe willingness to work on it and learn to work on motorcycles because it's very easy to do. It's screw adjust valves. It's not a hard thing to do on your own if you want to, but just keep in mind you are going to have to do that every time you do an oil change, just because it's the older engine architecture that Royal Enfield is using, partially also to keep the price point at such a competitive level. All right, let's take a tour around the bike now that we've covered the specs, starting at the front. So you can see we've talked about the wheels, tires, and things like that. It's going to come with different models of tires. They say they're coming in different batches, so I don't really want to commit telling you what kind of tires your bike is going to have. Low front mudguard here. We talked about the front forks. Incandescent headlight. You're not getting an LED. Incandescent turn signals as well. Let's work our way around the side. So you can see here the side of the engine, air-cooled engine, obviously. These side covers. The rear frame, rear passenger pegs. You do get a standard center stand, which is really nice. You can see the kickstand here. You see the shift lever, the gas tank, which is beautiful. And this, I'll put the color name here in the text because I don't know it off the top of my head yet. The seat here, which is really nicely kind of stylized and has pretty good room for a passenger, and you get passenger grab handles. You can see the twin rear shocks with those preload collars or preload adjusters that we already mentioned. Coming around to the back, you can see the rear tire there. You can see the rear lighting. You do get an LED brake light, but incandescent turn signals. The rear license plate holder. You can see the Royal Enfield logo here on the seat. Take a look at the rear brakes, rear suspension, exhaust, which runs under here. Heat shield on the exhaust for your passenger. Passenger accommodations actually look pretty decent. You can see large rear brake lever here. This is your clutch cable. So Royal Enfields are very easy to service, very easy to work on and to repair on the side of the road if you ever needed to, because everything's very, very basic. You can see an oxygen sensor coming off the exhaust here. Front brakes, we've already talked about that. Let's take a look at the cockpit and controls. So on our cockpit and controls, you can see you've got mirrors which come out pretty nice and far here on the sides. You can see the light switch here. So you've got a passing function and you've got high and low beam here, toggles like that. Turn signals, horn button. You can see you don't have adjustable levers. You're not going to get that at a price point like this. You can adjust the clutch cable here. Tubular handlebar, normal key. The instrument cluster, so you've got a large analog speedometer here which goes up to 100 miles an hour, which is optimistic obviously, unless you drop the bike out of a plane. Now, fuel gauge, you've got a fuel indicator gauge here, you've got a clock, there's a gear position indicator and an odometer. Now, I believe that there's a way to toggle. Oh yes, I found the button. So the button is here. So if I toggle that, I can toggle trip A, trip B odometer. So that's what you get there. So it has everything you really need, and you've got some indicator lights down here as well. Brake reservoir, stop start, switch, hazard lights. So it does have hazard lights, which is nice to see. And you've got these kind of Royal Enfield grips, which are comfortable. They have kind of this bulge in the middle, and they're comfortable on your hand. And of course, you've got the fuel filler here, which you open like that, put the key in, and you can go ahead and get gas. Okay, give you a little taste of the starting sound and revving it up. Sounds pretty good. All right, so we've been riding the Hunters around town now for about 4 miles. Really fun little bike to ride. What a great bike for getting around the city. It's got plenty of torque and power to get you off the line, beat the traffic off the stoplights and stop signs, things like that. The brakes feel really good so far, surprisingly good for Royal Enfield. The instrumentation's easy to read. The ergonomics, you lean forward just a tiny bit, but I think that's nice. You kind of brace against the wind, because there's no wind protection, obviously. So here's the acceleration. You can see it gets up to 50 miles an hour, no problem. Above 50 miles an hour, that's where you notice the acceleration is a little bit lacking. That's where that lack of horsepower kind of comes in, but 55, 60, it's perfectly fine. Enough power for things like this, and you know, for most of the world this is enough, right? But here in the United States, we like to go fast, we like a lot of power and things like that. But this bike will do almost everything you need to do. The mirrors have pretty good visibility. There's not too much buzz in the mirrors, a little bit at higher RPMs. The gearbox shifts really well, really smooth. I really, actually, playing with it right now, it's great. It shifts very nicely. And handlebars are in a comfortable position. The seat feels good. Of course, I haven't been riding it all day. And everybody seems to be having a great time. And I really love how Royal Enfield gives you so many different color options. And here in the sun, you can see there's just a lot of great colors that they have. I'm really partial to this blue and white. But man, they really do a great job with their styling. So the rev limiter there in second gear is about 45 miles an hour. You hit the rev limiter. Handling feels pretty good. Zipping around through traffic, this bike is really a joy to ride. Rear brake even feels pretty strong. I did activate the ABS on purpose, but I'm pretty impressed with the overall braking power. It feels really good, actually. The engine also has a nice sound to it. It's got kind of a nice rumble to it, a nice deep tone. It doesn't sound, I mean, it has character, right? That's the whole point of this bike, is it has a lot of character to it. And the sound of the engine, you can hear me revving it there. It's definitely part of it. I really enjoy that. Sounds like a real motorcycle, not a vacuum cleaner.
What did you say? Just pull it up a little more, like right on the edge. Where? Like so that the front wheel is like right about there. And angle it that way more. That? Yeah. Right.
So the bike is very narrow, which means that lane filtering or lane splitting, if that's something you do where you live, it's very, very easy to do that. It's just a great bike for riding around in traffic, filtering lanes like we're doing here. Works really well with that. They're filming us from that camera bike right there. Pretty good skill that he can sit on the back like that and hold a big camera setup. All right, well, there's a bit of wind noise, but I'm out here on the highway. I've got the throttle fully open. I mean, I really want to see if this thing can keep up with freeway traffic here in California, and it's doing a lot better than I thought. I'm going slightly uphill and I'm doing almost 80 miles an hour, so it just seems to have a little bit better top end than the Meteor and some of the other bikes the Royal Enfield has. Also, the handling's really stable. There's no wobble or anything at 75. Now it is only a 5-speed gearbox, but it doesn't seem to matter. The bike has plenty tall enough gearing. Now I do have the throttle wide open and I lost a couple miles an hour, so it's not really going to be something you want to use at high speeds for long periods of time, like for touring at high speed. But if you just need to go, 20 miles or something on the highway, on the freeway, it keeps up with all the traffic. I mean, you can see here I'm passing the traffic on the freeway. So I think it's okay for doing a little bit of this, and it's better than I thought it would be, honestly. Okay, now there's kind of a wind hitting me, and I've dropped to 68 miles an hour. Oh, there's the traffic. I don't want to get killed here. Gosh, man, I'm so spoiled by not living in the city. I don't live down here, so I'm just not used to dealing with traffic, man. I'm so spoiled rotten with where I live. I need to get off the freeway and go the other direction. This is just bad. I guess we're getting into commuter hours as well, so. But man, this is the nice thing about being a motorcyclist here in California. We're allowed to do this. You just have to do it safely and really pay attention to what the cars are doing. There's actually another rider up in front of me here, you can see. So you gotta watch for somebody like that guy who's trying to merge. So yeah, I'm now going the other direction on the freeway. I haven't been able to go above about 75, and it's a little bit hard to keep up with the fast lane sometimes when you drop below about 75 or 80. So, I mean, again, you don't want to do this for extended periods of time, but it is definitely something you can ride on the freeway for short periods of time if you need to. I dropped to 65 on that hill, downshifted to 4th, now I'm back up to 70, 72, 74, 77. That's an indicated 82, 83, downhill, 84. All right, we should probably talk about what are the competitors to this bike here in the US if you're looking at purchasing one of these. So in the USA, we don't have a lot of direct competition for this model, unfortunately. That's why I think Royal Enfield's probably going to be very successful with it. I know in other countries you have a lot more options for more affordable basic bikes, but we don't get a lot of those here in the United States. So let's cover Royal Enfield's own models first. So they have a Meteor 350 and a Classic 350. They're using the same engine as this bike, but the styling and the ergonomics are dramatically different on those than with the Hunter. So it's going to depend on what kind of styling you prefer. For me, I don't really like the Meteor or the Classic. I'm just not into that kind of styling, but this bike I think is absolutely fantastic looking. And let me know what you think, but I think it looks like kind of a Triumph Street Twin or Speed Twin, something like that, which is really a high compliment. Now you could look at something like Royal Enfield's Scram 411. So the Scrambler 411, it's going to be heavier, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive, a taller seat height, it's going to have more power with that larger engine, it's going to have a little bit more top speed than the Meteor. You've got the 19-inch front wheel instead of the 17-inch front wheel here on the Meteor, but you do get some off-road abilities baked into that Scrambler 411 that you don't get on the Hunter. Now, if we want to compare it to other small beginner type motorcycles here in the USA, it's very tough because a lot of these bikes don't come in at the lowest MSRP that the Hunter does. So some other models we could look at would be like the Husqvarna Svartpilen. They make a 401, KTM Duke 390 and 200, although the Duke is a lot more of a sporty styling, sporty riding position. You've got bikes like the Honda Rebel 300. You have the BMW G310 lineup of bikes. And of course you've got, if you want to look at some of the entrants from the Chinese motorcycle companies like CF Moto, which offer really good value. But I think the Royal Enfield Hunter is very uniquely positioned. If you look at its price point, the features, the styling, kind of also the heritage and the name recognition that you get from Royal Enfield, for under $4,000, this bike is really unbeatable in terms of being competitive with the other bikes. All right, so it's been a few days since I filmed the review. I'm back here, I'm editing the review right now, actually, and I realized I need to answer the questions you sent in. So I asked for questions from you on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So I'm gonna go through those now and answer the questions that you sent in. So I'll start here at the bottom. Let's see, Yaman Eco 36, I know I'm gonna mess up all these names. He says, hope you're having fun. Is there any weekend touring options? Is it comfortable enough? Also, why call it Hunter if it's a Commuter? I don't know the reasoning behind the naming. I'm not sure why it's called the Hunter. I know in other countries they have that. I think in Europe they call it the HNTR instead of spelling out Hunter. So I don't know why they name bikes the way they do. Weekend touring, is it comfortable enough? It's pretty comfortable. I mean, we were riding all day and it was fine. When you say touring, as long as it's not super high speed touring, like on high speed freeways or highways, like I showed in the video, I think you'd be okay. A little bit of luggage would be okay. I think if you want to take luggage and a passenger, you know, that's really not what this bike is intended for. But could you go on a weekend trip, an overnight trip? Absolutely, totally. All right. Let's see, Dave 911 RSR says, can't even find a good used bike for $4,000. That's totally true, right? Two-wheeled adventures would be a great weekend and around town cruiser. Options for spoke wheels or only cast wheels. Wheelbase weight and rake is different from the Meteor and Classic. Yes, so I mentioned this in the video, I put it in some of the captions. It's quite a bit different than the Meteor and Classic. We're inclined to think that it's the same bike with different styling, but it isn't. The frame's all different. So the frame is different, it's lighter. The rake is sharper, I think, for quicker handling. The wheel sizes are different. So you've got a 17-inch front wheel, which makes the bike handle better. What else is different? And the weight, yeah, the weight is about 10 kilograms, about 22 pounds lighter on the Hunter. So, I mean, for me, it'd be a no-brainer. If I was buying one of these, I would definitely get the Hunter, not only because I prefer the styling, but it's a smaller, lighter bike that I think handles better. But it also depends on what styling you like and what kind of a genre of bike you're looking for. Let's see, is it a good idea? Billy.jpg says, is it a good idea to toss knobbies on it and bomb through the woods? Probably not, but you could do that. I think you should do that and report back to us and let me know how that goes. Rikiba Buna says, I've been riding around your neck of the woods. It's going to be scary on the freeway. Everybody's going 20 over. It depends. If you get into the open freeway areas where traffic is moving at 80 or 90, then you're going to be more in the slow lane or the middle lane. But as I showed in the review, I think you can keep up pretty well as long as the traffic's not going too crazy fast. Clever Swine says, is there any quality control? These things are not reliable. Looks don't matter when a machine breaks down. I would have to say that modern Royal Enfields seem to be pretty reliable. So I'm not so sure where the doubt is coming there about the reliability, but other people can chime in and let me know what you think about reliability. But they seem pretty reliable to me. Tons of people running Royal Enfields all around the world at this point. All right, getting into the YouTube comments now. There's quite a few. Mike P says, I would take an Indian bike over a Chinese bike. Yeah, I see what you're saying there. But I think we need to keep an open mind about the future for sure. Insatiable Mind says, seems like a great beginner bike or city commuter, not a highway machine. Yeah, for sure. You're exactly right, and I think that's what they intended. Roger Gustafson says, check how much it costs to maintain. Prices here in Sweden for basic maintenance is way too much.
making it less economical than its purchase price gives an impression of. So I can't answer that question, but that is a good point. If you're thinking of buying any motorcycle, call some dealers in your area and ask about what the services cost for whatever bike you're going to buy, and factor that into your purchase, because it can vary a lot. That's why I don't like to quote these things in my videos, and people get different deals or have different dealerships or service shops, so it's hard to say, but yeah, you should definitely factor that in. Leon Phelps says $3,999 sounds enticing until you realize the extra $2,000 in dealer add-on and blank fees. Yeah, you're right. Dealerships do that. That's a whole nother discussion that we don't have time to get into, but dealerships do have additional costs in addition to the price of the bike. Tally-Ho Tech says, I hope you have an oxygen mask and are ready for the G-forces. Yeah, the G-forces were pretty severe on this one. Flight 29er says, would it be suitable for short runs with a pillion on board? Yes. There were people riding 2 up on the bike the entire day, or actually all 3 days of the press launch, and they were perfectly fine. The Strong Mind says, curious to know how it handles loads of luggage. You know, we didn't get to test that, so I apologize. We didn't get to test the bikes with luggage, but the people that were riding 2 up on the bike didn't seem to have any handling or stability issues. Comfortable and stable while riding standing up. When I tried to stand up, the exhaust kind of gets in the way of your heel, so it's very kind of awkward to stand, but I don't think riders are going to be really standing on this bike. It's not an off-road bike. Grayman GW says, miles per gallon fuel capacity, we covered that. 5 or 6 gears, it's 5 gears. Is it easy to get up to speed? Yes, below about 60 miles an hour, up to about 60 miles an hour, it's okay. House of Fru says, I know they're quite different, but would you rather have this or a Honda Grom as an only bike? I'd way rather have the Royal Enfield. It looks better, it feels higher quality, it has more capability, it's a lot more machine for the money. Manoj Nayak says, that's a great option, but they already had a Commuter with the Meteor and the Royal Enfield Classic. Well, the MSRP is great, the dealers add fees, a market adjustment, blah, blah, blah. It'll be listed at $52.99. Yeah, you're right about that. They do have now 3 bikes with this engine, but you have to understand manufacturers are always going to do that. They're always going to develop an engine or a platform and make multiple bikes with it. That's economically feasible for them. And in terms of the dealerships, again, that's a whole nother discussion, but I totally hear what you're saying there. All right, that was it for the questions and answers. Thank you guys for sending in those questions.
All right, so it's time to give you my final thoughts and any pros and cons to the Royal Enfield Hunter 350. So I think Royal Enfield have really hit on something important and something special here. They've delivered a motorcycle that looks good, is well constructed, is fun to ride, easy to ride. It costs $4,000. It's got a 3-year unlimited mile warranty. It's going to look great parked at your local bike night or parked at school or your job or whatever you need to do. It's really just a machine that I think could make beginners happy because it's easy enough to ride, it's not too much power, but it could make more experienced riders happy as well. Because for someone more experienced, this might be a bike that you want to use to get around town, or just something that looks really cool and is kind of that retro styling to take to your local bike night or Sunday afternoon rides to your local cafe. So I think it can make a lot of people very happy. I think Royal Enfield have got onto something very, very good here with this bike. But I'd like to know what you all think. For around this price point, $4,000, what else would be out there that you would buy compared to this? I'm really interested to know, because it's hard for me to think of any motorcycle around this price point that is as good as this and has that kind of warranty for the money. So I really hope this review was useful. I hope I covered all the important points. Please subscribe, please support Big Rock Moto. There's ways to do that in the description below. Other than that, ride safe, and I'll see you out there.